The heavy iron doors opened with a loud creak, and Captain Reed was pushed inside. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and strange blue light flickered from tall crystal torches. Hundreds of female alien warriors stood in curved rows, their eyes glowing like molten silver, each one staring at him with unreadable expressions. He could feel their judgment, their curiosity, a cue, and something else he could not name. Reed had fought in battles before, but this was different. There were no guns here, no shouting soldiers, only silence and the slow, steady sound of his boots on the polished black stone floor. At the far end, on a throne carved from a single block of white crystal, sat the Queen. Her long dark hair shimmered under the torchlight, her golden skin smooth and flawless, her eyes sharp as a predator's. "You stand accused of dishonoring my guards," the Queen said in a calm, cold voice. Her words echoed in the vast hall, and Reed could feel the tension around him grow heavier. He opened his mouth to explain, to tell them what really happened during that border skirmish, but before he could speak, one of the guards stepped forward, her armor gleaming, her voice full of challenge. "He struck me," she said, pointing at him. "He defied the will of the Queen," the crowd murmured, their whispers sliding through the air like snakes. Reed clenched his jaw, his mind flashing back to that day, the chaos, the confusion, and how he had no choice but to defend himself. But he knew that in this place, truth was not as important as the will of the Queen. The Queen leaned forward on her throne, her sharp gaze never leaving him. "Under our laws, your life is mine to take," she said, her voice smooth yet dangerous. Reed braced himself for the sentence, ready to hear the order for his execution, but instead, her lips curved into a small, strange smile. "Yet, I will not kill you," she continued. "There is another way." The hall grew quieter, the alien women leaning in as if they already knew what she would say. Reed's heart thumped harder in his chest. The Queen stood, her long gown flowing like water around her as she descended the throne steps. "You will take part in the ritual of mating," she said, her voice ringing clear. A wave of soft laughter and hushed giggles rolled through the crowd. Some women smiled in a way that made his skin crawl. Others looked at him as if they were inspecting prey. Reed frowned, unsure if this was some kind of cruel joke or a different kind of punishment. "This is not a choice," the Queen added, standing so close that he could see the faint shimmer of gold dust on her skin. "You will prove yourself to us, or you will remain in the ritual until your body fails." Her words hit him like a heavy blow. He had survived enemy fire, hand-to-hand combat, and deadly missions. But this was something else entirely. Two guards approached, each placing a hand on his shoulders, their grip firm. They began to lead him away, but Reed twisted his head to look back at the Queen. "What exactly is this ritual?" he asked, his voice steady but low. The Queen only smiled and said, "You will learn." At moonrise, the sound of the heavy doors closing behind him echoed like the end of a sentence he did not want to hear. Outside the tribunal hall, the alien guards guided him down a long corridor lit with glowing stones in the walls. The air here was warmer, carrying the faint scent of flowers, mixed with something deeper, something more dangerous. Every step seemed to pull him closer to a fate he could not yet understand. He had no weapon, no allies, and no escape. But as he walked, Reed felt a strange mix of dread and determination rising in his chest. Whatever this ritual was, he would not let them break him. And somewhere deep inside, a question burned. Was this truly a punishment, or a test he was never meant to survive? The corridor twisted and turned, each step echoing softly against the smooth black stone. Reed kept his head high, though the alien guards on either side of him were tall enough to block out most of the flickering wall light. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, curling and twisting like living vines. They seemed to hum in a rhythm that made the air thrum in his ears. The guards said nothing, their grip on his arms firm but not cruel, as if they knew he wasn't going to run but still didn't trust him to walk free. They emerged into a vast open chamber. And the sudden change in air made Reed's skin prickle. It was warmer here, almost tropical, the scent of strange flowers mixing with an underlying tang of something sharp. In the center of the space, an oval pool of shimmering silver liquid reflected the flickering lights above. Around it stood at least 24 alien women, each dressed in different colors and patterns that marked their tribes. Their eyes shifted toward him all at once, the weight of their stares hitting him like a physical force. One of the guards pushed him forward until he stood at the edge of the pool, a tall alien woman with pale green skin and hair like braided. Silver stepped forward. She carried a staff topped with a crystal that glowed faintly. Her gaze swept over him slowly, as if measuring his worth without a single word. She then lifted her chin and spoke in their language, her voice deep and musical. The sound rippled through the hall, causing the women to murmur softly in reply. From behind him, Reed heard the slow, deliberate footsteps of someone approaching. The guard stepped aside, and the queen herself entered. Her gown flowing behind her like a river of light, she circled him, never breaking eye contact, and Reed could feel the silent challenge in her gaze. Her voice was soft but carried easily across the chamber as she said, "The moon will rise soon, and with it, the ritual begins." The women around the pool began moving in a slow, spiraling formation. Their steps synchronized as if rehearsed for years. Reed's pulse quickened. He didn't know if this was some ceremonial dance or the beginning of whatever trial they had planned for him. A faint drumbeat began somewhere unseen, steady and low, like a second heartbeat in the room. The queen stopped directly in front of him, her hand reaching out to trace a single finger along his jaw. Her touch was warm, almost gentle, but her eyes told him it was a warning. One of the women broke away from the formation and approached. Her hair was a deep crimson, her eyes sharp as blades. She moved with a predator's grace, stopping only inches away from him. Without a word, she leaned close, inhaling his scent as if committing it to memory. The other women slowed their steps. Watching closely, the queen tilted her head slightly. And Reed understood this was only the first of many tests. He stood still, refusing to flinch or step back. The crimson-haired woman smirked faintly before stepping away, melting back into the circle. The drumbeat grew louder, the air warmer. And Reed realized the walls of the chamber seemed to pulse faintly in time with the sound. It was as if the room itself was alive, breathing with them. The queen gave a small nod, and the formation of women opened, revealing a second passage. Bathed in soft blue light, the guards took their place beside him again, their hands gripping his arms with renewed firmness. The queen's voice followed him as they began to lead him away. "Do not forget, human, every look, every breath. Every choice you make tonight will decide your fate." The words echoed in his head as the blue light grew brighter ahead. Each step pulled him deeper into the unknown. And though part of him wanted to believe this was only a strange custom, another part knew this was something far more dangerous. He glanced once over his shoulder, catching the eyes of the crimson-haired woman watching him from the shadows. There was a hint of a smile on her lips, not friendly, not cruel, but full of something he couldn't name. It made his chest tighten, not from fear, but from the strange realization that he might not leave this place the same man who walked in. The blue-lit passage narrowed as Reed moved forward. The walls so close now he could feel the faint warmth radiating from them. The guard's footsteps echoed in perfect rhythm with his own, and somewhere ahead he could hear a low, steady hum. It wasn't mechanical, it was alive, like dozens of voices whispering the same tone without pausing for breath. The sound made his skin prickle. They stepped into a smaller chamber, the air thicker here, carrying the scent of sweet herbs mixed with something sharper. Reed's eyes adjusted to the dim light, and he realized he was no longer alone with just. The guards, 4 alien women, stood in a half-circle, each dressed differently, one in flowing silk, one in leather armor, one in feathers, and one with her skin painted in swirling patterns of gold. They were all watching him with the same strange intensity. The one in leather armor stepped forward first, her presence radiating strength. Her hair was bound tightly, her eyes narrow. And assessing, she said nothing, simply began to circle him the way a hunter might study prey. Every step she took was deliberate. Her boots clicking against the floor, Reed turned his head slowly to follow her movements, refusing to show uncertainty. Without warning, she lunged, her hand shot out. Gripping his wrist with surprising force, she twisted, testing his balance. And Reed reacted instinctively, stepping in and breaking her grip without striking her. A small smile tugged at her lips. Not of kindness, but of acknowledgement. She stepped back into place, her eyes never leaving his. The woman in feathers approached next, her steps soft and silent. She didn't try to grab him. Instead, leaning close, her breath brushing against his ear, her voice was low and musical as she whispered words he couldn't understand. But the tone, playful, taunting, was clear enough. She ran her fingers lightly along his arm, testing if he would pull away. He didn't. Though his pulse quickened, the others moved closer, their eyes narrowing. The woman in silk reached for his chin, tilting his face toward hers. She studied him for a long moment, then brushed her thumb across his cheek as if marking him. Reed could feel the tension in the air grow heavier. Each touch, each look, felt like part of a game whose rules he didn't know. From the far corner, the painted woman stepped forward, her gold patterns glowing faintly in the dim light. She held a thin blade, its edge catching the blue glow of the walls. Slowly, she pressed the flat of the blade to his chest, not cutting, just letting the cool metal rest against him. Her eyes locked with his, searching for fear. Reed stared back, unblinking, until finally she lowered the weapon. The hum in the room grew louder, vibrating in his bones. He realized the sound was coming from behind a carved door on the opposite side. The guards moved toward it, and the women stepped aside without a word. Reed followed, his chest tight with a mix of adrenaline and unanswered questions. The door opened into darkness, and the hum became a pulse, deep and steady, like the heartbeat of some giant creature. Reed hesitated for the first time. The guards looked at him but didn't push, as if the choice to step forward had to be his alone. He took a breath and entered, feeling the warmth wrap around him like a living thing. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the shadows, a voice spoke in perfect, clear human language. So, the human has come to prove himself. Reed froze, the sound of that voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. It was calm, confident, and unmistakably feminine. The guards didn't react, as if they had expected it. Slowly, a soft light began to spread across the room, revealing the speaker. She was unlike any of the women he had seen before, her presence carrying a weight that made the air feel thicker. She stepped into full view. Her gown, a deep shade of blue that shimmered like liquid under the faint glow. Her hair was long and dark, her features sharp yet graceful. But it was her eyes, calm and steady, with a spark of something dangerous that held him still. "You don't know who I am," she said. Not as a question, but as a fact. Reed shook his head once. "I am the Queen's daughter," she continued, her voice smooth as silk, yet edged with steel. "And tonight, I decide whether you walk out of here, or never leave at all." Her gaze swept over him slowly, not with lust, but with something closer to evaluation. She moved closer, her steps silent, her hands folded behind her back. "You fought hard to protect your soldiers," she said. even when the odds were against you. Reed felt his jaw tighten, unsure if her tone was praise or accusation. "Why?" she asked simply, as if the answer mattered more than any trial. He took a slow breath. "Because they were my responsibility," he replied, "because no one gets left behind." Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her. Eyes brief, almost hidden, she began to circle him, studying him from every angle. "Most who stand here try to impress us," she said. "They boast of their strength, or beg for mercy." She stopped behind him, her voice low. "You've done neither." Reed didn't answer. Letting the silence speak for him, she stepped in front of him again, now standing close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of heat on her skin. Her gaze locked on his, and for a moment, the world beyond this room seemed to fade. "The others want to test your body," she said. "I want to test your truth," before he could respond. Movement flickered in the shadows along the walls. Several other women had entered silently. Their eyes fixed on the Queen's daughter, Reed noticed how they positioned themselves. Not close enough to interfere, but near enough to watch every detail. It wasn't just curiosity, it was rivalry. The Queen's daughter glanced toward them, but didn't acknowledge their presence directly. "There are those here who want you to fail," she said softly. "They will make sure of it if they can." She reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist. "But if you pass tonight, you'll not only earn your freedom, you'll earn a place none of them could take from you." Her words hung between them, heavy with meaning Reed couldn't fully grasp. Then she stepped back, the glow in the room dimming slightly. "When the drums sound again, the second phase begins," she said. "Until then, remember, every moment is a choice." The guards moved toward him again, but Reed's eyes stayed locked on hers as he was led away. He had come here a prisoner, but now something told him this was more than punishment. It was a game, and he was walking deeper into the center of it. The hall they led him into was dim, lit only by bowls of slow-burning blue fire along the walls. The heat was heavier here, clinging to his skin. The guards released him and stepped back, and almost at once an attendant appeared. She was smaller than the warriors he had seen, her robe soft and loose, her steps quick but graceful. Without asking, she pressed a cup into his hands, the liquid inside glowing faintly like captured starlight. Reed hesitated, the scent sweet and strangely inviting. It reminded him of fruit he had eaten on a jungle world, only richer, warmer. The attendant's eyes lingered on him, her lips curving in a small smile. "It will help you," she said, "for what comes next." He caught the way her gaze slid toward the far doorway, where shadows shifted as if someone was waiting. He took a careful sip, the flavor flooding his mouth, smooth and intoxicating. Almost at once, heat spread through his veins. His heartbeat deepened, and every sound in the room seemed sharper. He realized too late this wasn't just a drink. It was meant to affect him, to make him weaker in ways that weren't about strength. From the shadows stepped another woman, tall, with hair like molten gold and eyes that glimmered in the firelight. She moved with a languid, rolling grace, each step deliberate. Her gaze held his as she circled him, fingertips brushing his shoulder. "So this is the human who thinks he can pass our trials," she said softly. Her voice carried amusement, but also a challenge. She leaned close, her scent mixing with the heat in his blood. "Show me," she murmured, "or admit you don't belong here." Her hand traced down his arm, her body close enough for him to feel her warmth. Reed's pulse thudded in his ears. The drink made his focus waver. Pushing at his self-control, he forced himself to meet her eyes instead of her touch. Her smile widened slightly as if she had expected him to break. The other women in the shadows watched silently, their expressions unreadable. He understood now. This wasn't just about desire, it was about control. If he gave in too easily, They would see him as nothing more than prey. Reed took a slow step back, his voice steady despite the heat in his veins. "If you want to see what I can do, you'll have to wait until the real test for a moment." Her eyes narrowed. Then she gave a soft, amused laugh and stepped aside. The women in the shadows whispered to each other, the sound like rustling silk. The guards reappeared, motioning for him to follow. The golden-haired woman's gaze lingered on him as he walked past, not with anger, but with interest. Reed didn't know if he had passed that test or simply moved to the next. But the heat in his blood reminded him that the drink's effect wasn't going away, and the night was far from over. The path ahead opened into a vast, circular hall, the ceiling lost in shadow. A ring of tall, narrow flames surrounded the center, casting flickering light that made every movement seem alive. Reed stepped forward slowly, the heat in his blood from the drink still simmering. His senses were sharper, his heartbeat heavier, and every sound echoed like it was inside his head. From the far side of the hall, the Queen entered, her gown trailing behind her like molten silver. The alien women lining the edges bowed there, heads slightly, though their eyes stayed fixed on him. She walked toward him without haste, her presence so commanding that the space between them seemed to shrink faster than her steps could cover. When she stopped only a breath away, she studied him in silence. Her eyes were cool. "Searching for something deeper than strength, you have faced my warriors, my daughter, and temptation itself," she said, her voice carrying easily despite its softness. "Now you face me." Her gaze didn't waver as she reached to the side, and an attendant placed a ceremonial blade in her hand. She turned the weapon and held it out to him, the polished handle facing his palm. Reed took it without a word, the metal cool against it. His skin, the Queen then lifted her chin, baring the smooth line of her throat. The crowd around them stilled completely, the air itself seeming to hold its breath. "You have two choices," she said, her tone calm but heavy with meaning. "Strike and end me, or guard me and risk everything." Reed's grip on the blade tightened. He could feel every pair of eyes on him, waiting, judging. Some wanted him to fail. Others were eager to see what he would choose. She stepped even closer, her gaze unwavering. "Decide, human," she murmured. "The ritual does not forgive hesitation." Reed's mind raced. This was no simple test. If he attacked, he would prove his dominance, but risk becoming a prisoner to their laws forever. If he refused, he might be seen as weak, but perhaps earn something greater. For a long moment, the flames crackled in the silence. Then, slowly, Reed lowered the blade, turning it so the sharp edge faced away from her. The Queen's eyes flickered, a subtle shift he couldn't quite read. But the watching women stirred, whispers rippling through them like wind over dry leaves. He stepped back and dropped to one knee, the blade resting across his palms. "I will not harm you," he said, his voice steady. "That is not the kind of strength I have." The Queen took the weapon back without looking away from him. And for the first time that night, a faint, knowing smile touched her lips. The flames around them flared higher, and the hum of approval or anticipation moved through the gathered women. Reed felt the tension change, as though the night had shifted into a new phase. The Queen turned to the assembly and spoke in her own language, her words sharp and deliberate. The crowd's reaction was a mixture of cheers and murmurs. The guards stepped forward again, but this time their hands did not grip his arms. They walked beside him as he was led from the hall, the sound of the Queen's voice still echoing in his mind. He had passed, or perhaps only survived, but he knew the final judgment had not yet been given. The night air outside the ritual hall was cooler, carrying the faint scent of the flowers that bloomed under the alien moon. Reed's footsteps were slow as the guards led him back toward the tribunal chamber. His body still carried the heat from the drink, the trials, and the weight of every stare he had endured. The path was lined with silent watchers, women from different tribes who whispered to one another as he passed. Their expressions unreadable. The heavy doors of the tribunal swung open, revealing the same vast chamber where it had all begun. The queen sat upon her throne once more, her daughter at her side, the warriors' attendants, and challengers from the night all stood in a wide circle, their eyes locked on him. The guards stopped a few paces from the center and stepped back, leaving him alone under the glow of the crystal torches. The queen's gaze was steady, her voice calm but carrying the weight of finality. "You have faced what no other of your kind has dared to face," she said. "You met my warriors without fear, resisted temptation without breaking, and stood before me without striking." The murmurs around the room grew louder, some voices approving, others still doubtful. She rose from her throne and descended the steps, her gown sweeping across the polished floor. "Our law says a man who passes the ritual earns the right to walk free," she continued. "But the law also says he may choose to stay and take a place among us that few are worthy of." Reed felt every eye on him tighten with anticipation. Her daughter stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. "If you leave, you return to your world as a man who survived us," she said softly. "If you stay, you will be more than a survivor." Her meaning was clear, and the ripple of tension in the room made the choice feel heavier. Reed's thoughts flashed through every moment of the night. The circling warriors, the tests of strength, the whispered threats, the queen's challenge. And the way he had walked away from it without surrendering who he was, he knew the answer before he spoke it. "I'll stay," he said, his voice firm. A wave of reaction swept through the chamber. Some gasps, some smiles, some glances exchanged between women who now saw him differently. The queen studied him for a long, silent moment, then gave a slow, approving nod. "Then you are no longer prisoner," she said. "You are part of the right's legacy." She stepped aside, and the women closed in, not as captors, but as those welcoming someone into their circle. Reed could feel the shift, the air alive with something dangerous and thrilling. The queen leaned close as she passed him, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "You will not regret this," she murmured, "but you will never be the same." The chamber filled with the sound of drums, the start of something new, and as the circle of women tightened around him, Reed knew the night's true ritual had only just begun.